conference will now be recorded.
Hello, friends. Good morning and welcome back. And let's kick it off. So, as you know, we have started yesterday about discussing about the Azure and Azure DevOps. Just want to give you a rough recap what is exactly happening. So, uh, as you can see, let me go back and have a just overview about what we discussed yesterday. Yesterday was the class one of the training, and these are some things which I have discussed. Especially the main points will be like what is your career path. As you can see, the as I said, like there are a lot of jobs will be is available or will be also available next year for DevOps and site reliability engineering. So they are saying about platform engineer, but it will take time. It's not that still you require the same skill. So the expectation from those companies will be like a multi-cloud. So it should be Azure and AWS or AWS and Azure, vice versa. As I said, GCP will take time, and to automate that, to efficiently manage that, you require DevOps and also microservices architecture. So if you need to plan in such a way, so for example, if you ask me the career path, so follow this one. So because everybody requires a way actually. So imagine if people try to start directly from DevOps, so which they face a difficulty, and there will be people saying about AWS DevOps, Azure DevOps. Don't go in such a way. Okay, so if you want to follow, you require a learning path where you want to go step by step and improve yourself. So what you can do, you can use this way. Like you can start with Azure as of now, what you are doing, be very good in that one. So the companies or firms are not expecting a average or a mediocre knowledge, so they are expecting good knowledge actually. So imagine if I'm a manager, I don't want to hire something, or I'll tell you my way of attitude, or my way of dealing with people. So I don't need a person who knows 100%, because if he knows 100%, what he's going to learn again new things, right? So I expect if he knows about a 70% and he has enthusiasm to learn 30%, that is enough for me. I'm talking about roles where it will be like engineers, senior engineers, where maybe tech leads, something like that. So when you plan for doing the things right, plan in such a way. You start with Azure now, wait for it, study very hard, and next DevSecOps, AWS. Still you are very interested, if you have more experience, then you need to go for Kubernetes and then go for Python. Anyway, we're going to discuss about basics of Python and DevSecOps, but if you want to go full fledged, you go this way. Okay, anyway, these are the things. But yesterday the main thing is we have created a I showed you the steps to create a Azure free trial account. It's not a trail, it should be a trial. There is a difference between trail and trial. It's a free trial account, so which will give you 200 for 1 month. But as I told you, like our course will go on for 2 months, it's not 1 month. So what will happen, you might need to create, or not might, you must be able to create a new subscription. So for example, the subscriptions, if I come here, these are all the four subscriptions actually. Normally if I go here, so here the offer it is saying as pay as you go. That means whatever you are going to use, I'm going to pay to that one. So else you're going to show you as a free trial. Basically, even the free trial also, there will be showing some charges which is not applicable for you. After 1 month you can upgrade, or in between what will happen is when you are practicing some lab, right, there will be restrictions like you can't use more than 4 CPUs, then you need to upgrade it. So you learn slowly. Apart from that, yesterday we have deployed a Linux server just to practice from Linux commands. Okay, fair enough. Let's move on. So this is class 2 of Azure and Azure DevOps, and with the Terraform. So what exactly we are going to discuss today? We're going to discuss about physical hierarchy of the cloud. Now the question is, why not Azure? Why I'm not specifically saying about Azure or AWS or GCP, right? Because the physical hierarchy, or sorry, My bad. Physical hierarchy of the cloud remains the same across any cloud. I explained this even in AWS training as well. So after that, we're going to talk about logical hierarchy on Azure, which is more important than physical hierarchy. Now, why actually I'm explaining about physical hierarchy? That is where you're going to understand what exactly happening behind the scenes. So, see, this is not just in Azure cloud. Actually, what exactly is happening when you create a virtual machine, create a database, or deploy your application? There is something happening at the back end, right? So you need to understand that. If you understand that, then tomorrow, if you try to shift your focus towards the infrastructure security, you will easily understand. Okay. Sir, okay, so let's proceed with this. So what I'm going to do is, first let's understand what is the physical hierarchy of the cloud. Now, as I told you, this is not the cloud. This is just a portal, or I can say an entry point. Simply an entry point into the cloud. That's it. Nothing more, nothing less. But at the back end, whenever you deploy a resource, when I say resource, it can be anything. So ideally, these are all resources. It can be an virtual machine, or it can be a key vault. It can be maybe a database or storage account. It doesn't matter. Everything is basically called a resource. When you create a resource, obviously, just like your Facebook or just like your LinkedIn, the data is getting saved somewhere. We need to understand what exactly happening at the back end. So for that, let me go back and open. I'm going to open draw.io. Now draw.io can be used for designing purposes. Sorry, let me close this. Okay. This is basically called draw.io. Normally, earlier I used to use MS Paint to do that, but I felt like using draw.io will help you to design your stuff as well. Being a experienced person, sometimes what will happen is when you join a company, you really don't have a much of a designs actually. So you need to draw yourself. So if that is the situation, you need to have some sort of a tool to create the designs. So this will help you to create your design. Fine then. So I'm going to first save this to, let me go back. Going to save here. Okay. Now first things first. So let's understand. You can search for Azure actually. So Azure related, you're going to get it. Okay. So I'm going to say like Azure Cloud, for example, something you'll get a lot of pictures. But anyway, for the first thing, what we're going to do is first we need to understand if you take any cloud, right? So imagine it is specific to a region actually. There will be always a concept called a region. It can be, I'm going to compare it with Azure as well as AWS as well as GCP. Now imagine if I come here to resource groups, for example, which I'm going to explain about this tomorrow. But when we start creating resource group, it will definitely ask you for region. And you can notice there are two kinds of region. One is the recommended region, the other one is other regions. I'm going to tell you the difference tomorrow. But if you notice, there are a lot of regions available. If I take an example of India, for example, in India, so Microsoft Azure is being offered across three different regions. One is a central India under recommended region, others are South India and West India, right? So why I'm actually telling this is, don't consider region as a country. So if you take this region in India, it is showing three different regions actually. So don't consider, unless it is a very small country. I understand if you take Sri Lanka, for example, maybe they might have initially one region. It's not having it, but I'm just telling you the example, right? Like that. So as of now, as you can notice, so I'm going to say like India, you have three different regions. So now imagine if I'm going to compare that with, imagine I'm going to compare that with AWS actually. Let me log into that as well so that Hold on. Okay. Now this is, as you see, this is the AWS console, where we call it as Azure portal, but AWS console. If you come here, right, as you can notice, there is a region concept here as well. If you take AP South 1 and AP South 2, you have Mumbai and Hyderabad in India. Okay, similarly, if you go to US, right, I have four different regions actually. So regions is a very, very common thing across any cloud. Now the concentration which we need to do is, so if I take this as a region, okay, so now I'm going to, let's take region. So imagine I'm going to give you the text actually. I'm going to increase the size of the text. I'm going to show you how you can actually design the stuff, and you can make it as a default style, so that easy for next time if I get something, it will get in the same font actually. So let's take, I'm going to say region. Region is, I can say like East US for example, or Azure, we'll say region. I'm going to explain from a Azure perspective. I'm going to say like East US. But if you take AWS, right, it'll say like US East 1, US East 2, something like that. So, okay, this is what the region. Now, the region will be basically divided into something called as a availability zones, or simply in Azure, we call it as zones actually. Let me show you what exactly I meant. If I come here, right, if I try to create a machine, maybe a Windows machine or Linux machine, really doesn't matter. But if I try to deploy something, and if I come here under availability zone, you have something called as zone 1, zone 2, zone 3. The same thing, we actually call it as, if I go to dashboard for example in EC2, you're going to have something called zones called as 1A, 1B, C, D. I mean, this is the biggest region. US East 1 is the biggest region. So if I go to another region like Ohio, and then check out, ideally it will be three availability zones in most of the use cases actually. So as you can see, I have like 2A, 2B, and 2C. See, that is the same case. If I go to console dot cloud.google.com for example, imagine if I do go to Google Cloud, right, so I can basically come here, imagine, um, so for example, if I try to, so you're going to have regions something like this actually. Okay, so something like, see this here, US Central 1, Central 2, Central 3. So what you can do is, if I basically try to create the network, right, so for example, or if you try to deploy the subnets, for example, come here, if I try to add a subnet, you will see the concept of regions here as well in Google Cloud as well. Likewise, imagine, I'll do one thing. If I come here and go to, it's called compute engine in Google. So if I go to virtual machines, and if I try to deploy the virtual machines, okay, so the question is irrelevant, Neil, because this is not the time to answer that. Still there is time for that. So because I need to go out of the context to explain that. So when the time comes, I'll explain. So if you come here, see, check out the zones here. You have like 1A, 1B, 1C, 1C. See this? So it doesn't matter if you are in Google Cloud or AWS and Azure, the concept of zones already exists. Now, why I'm actually taking so much of interest on explaining the zones? What is the big deal about that one? Now, the big deal about that one is, being a, let me tell you, like obviously you are all going to become the engineers basically, right? So you're going to manage the whole cloud. Now what will happen, it is your responsibility to make sure that your application has 100%, I don't say 100%, 100% is not possible, but it should have high availability basically, like the application should not go down. So for example, if I take this, I'm going to say this as, for example, from Azure perspective, I'm going to call it as zone 1, right? Okay. Zone 2, zone 3. Okay, these three zones. Now what you need to understand is what exactly meant by zone actually. So these are individual data centers. So define a data center. Data center is nothing but a big building or multi-story building, or a let me show you something. Okay, so cloud data centers in West Virginia, for example. Okay, so for example, this is how it looks like. So this is how it looks like. Okay. So imagine if you are staying next to this this type of data center, right? That's all. You are gone. See, these people who are sitting next to, there will be huge amount of heat as well as sound. A huge amount of things will be coming actually. So I can see like there are three different buildings. So each one is actually a data center. So you can assume maybe each one is a zone, or maybe they call it as completely all these three buildings as a single zone, or maybe the other zone will be somewhere else actually. Okay, so that is what going to happen. So now the reason is when you're deploying an your application, for example, okay, the expectation is you are going to deploy your servers, right? Imagine you're going to deploy your servers across multiple zones. Why you want to do that? Because to avoid single point of failure. So what will happen is if the traffic is coming in, so imagine if I'm going to connect to swiggy.com, which is a food delivery site, right? So you might, I mean, it doesn't matter if you access and I access or anybody in this class access, you're going to get the same thing. I mean, the same front end, or I can say like default web page actually. But what you need to understand, even though we are all getting the same web page, we are not connecting to the same server. So what will happen when the clients get connected, right? Imagine I have clients, for example. So these are the clients. When as a client you are connecting, traffic will be routed to, maybe each client it will be routed to a different one. But everything is running a same web server basically. So why you want to do that? The reason is to avoid any single point of failure. This is what you're going to learn this. I'm going to explain as part of load balancing. But what you need to understand is it is your responsibility. You divide it. Not, it doesn't mean that only three servers. Imagine if you have very big application, right? So what are you going to do? I'm going to do something like this. I'm going to put two servers in each availability zone. So because I need to handle the load, right? Okay, like that. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to I'm going to load balance the traffic. You will have a load balancer here. So let me put like I'm going to put like Azure application gateway. So this is an application gateway. We're going to put an application gateway here, and the rest application gateway is a load balancer actually. Okay, you call it as application load balancer in AWS, or HTTP load balancer in Google. Here we call it as application gateway. So what I'm going to do, this is connected to this availability zone. Similarly, this is connected to this availability zone. Maybe this is connected to this availability zone, right? So in that way, the traffic is basically, the traffic is routed towards, as you notice, this one. So it is your responsibility when you come for a interview, right? I'm going to ask a question, how you are managing the application high availability. So you need to explain, we are using cloud, which is Azure cloud, which has a zone concept, and we distribute our workloads across multiple availability zones or zones, so that we don't have a single point of failure. Now this is the same hardware hierarchy across all the clouds. I can further go inside, like imagine what will happen. You have a region, you have a zone. Inside the zone you have a physical server. Inside the physical server you have some virtualization component. So virtual inside that, sorry, virtual hypervisor inside that physical server. What I'm trying to say is, let me show you. I'm going to say inside this you have physical servers actually. So you have physical servers. Inside the physical servers, you're going to put your servers. I'm going to say like I'm going to say physical servers actually, like this. I mean further in depth actually. So you have physical servers. Inside the physical servers, you install some sort of an hypervisor. So like a for example, if I take Azure as an example, it will be basically called as Hyper-V. Okay, and this is how it will be. This is same across every cloud. It can be AWS, it can be Google Cloud, it can be Azure. This is the physical hierarchy. The names might different, but as I said, there will be a region. Inside the region there will be availability zones. Inside the availability zones there will be one or more data centers. In each data center you will have physical servers. In each physical server they will host multiple servers. I mean, which we call it as virtual machines. Basically, that is what that this is happening in across every cloud actually, right? Now, this is not that important, but you need to understand what is happening at the back end. Now, next will be, let's understand the logical hierarchy. That is more important because you really don't engage with this physical hierarchy every day. Even though if you go to a data center, if you go to the most probably out of Pune, or if you go to out of Chennai, you'll get a data center, but you don't get any sort of access to that one, right? So you really don't need to bother about what exactly physical hierarchy, but understanding purposes only. But you need to understand logical hierarchy. This is far important. The reason it is important is you're going to engage this with every day. So because it requires, like, if you don't understand it, you don't know at what level you are giving permission. Instead of giving permission at a network, or maybe at a resource group level, you might give at a subscription level, or you might give to the whole account, which will compromise the security. See, one thing I have observed is people really show very, I mean, at least startups and small companies, right? If it is enterprise company, of course, they have very standardized things about security. But imagine if you have a smaller company or startups, right? Until they get hacked or until they get impacted by the unwanted people, so they don't really think about a lot about security, right? It happens in everything. Initially when they start, okay, so they need to hire a security person, they need to spend some 15-20 lakhs, right? So they don't want to do that. Why we need security, all this? But once they grow up, right, so they require security. So if you don't understand, providing permissions is one of the important aspect of the security. So if you don't understand the logical hierarchy, what is happening, you might give permissions at a different level. So what will happen is, instead of getting access to specific virtual machine, they might get access to the all virtual machines, and there is a chance they can delete everything. So what are we going to do? So that's why we need to understand that. So let me come to, I'm going to rename, and I'm going to say like physical. Let me create one more, and I'm going to say like logical. Now, when you first created your Microsoft account, I'm not talking about Azure actually. When you first went and create like the free trial subscription. Now, when you create free trial subscription, you should get automatically a subscription, right? But you are not getting it. But it is saying that it is creating an account. What exactly it is creating? So when you first create the Microsoft account, what is happening is, if I go to Microsoft Entra ID, so you will be allocated with a tenant ID. So normally every company who want to go to the cloud in Azure, right? First, obviously they will create an account. Maybe if I take a small company, there will be like a startup company where 10 people will there, where CEO or whoever is the founder will go ahead and create an account. So if I take like a big company who are planning to go to the cloud, they have an accounts team, they have some technical people, they'll ask to create it. But either way, when they first have their footprint in the cloud, especially in Azure, they need to use a valid email ID. If you take, I use this email ID, and they need to create an account. The moment they create an account, right, they will be allocated something called as tenant ID. So this is the centralized thing which is connected to all the other aspects. I can i can basically compare this with, if I take India, I can compare this with Aadhaar card. Maybe in across different countries, in us in US, you can talk to, you can say that as a social security number, or if you go to Gulf, there is a different number. So there will be some unique identity as a person to you, right? Why I need that actually? Because if I take Aadhaar card as an example, it is tied with everything, right? If you want to take a bank account, right? If you want to take a personal loan, car loan, home loan, or if you want to buy a house or sell a house, if you want to buy a empty land or sell the land, it doesn't matter. Wherever the government is involved, wherever the sale is involved, wherever the bank is involved, they will ask for an Aadhaar card, right? So it is tied to everywhere. So similarly, so at the top level, you can consider that as, I'm going to come here. Why it is not coming? Okay, I'm going to take this. As you can see, so this is my tenant ID actually, right? So now let me put something across this tenant ID. Now this is at the high level when you first create your account, right? So this will be very much at the high level. So I'm going to move this to the top. Now, why actually we required a tenant ID is, let me remove the grid actually. Okay, this is the tenant ID. Okay, good. Now, why do we require a tenant ID? Now, see, Microsoft is a pioneer of the operating system. They have a lot of products. Now imagine, just you are going into the Azure doesn't mean that you're going to stop with the Azure. For example, what if you want to have an email system, right? So imagine your startup requires some 50 people, you require email addresses, right? Similarly, you want to have a communications like a Slack, actually Microsoft provide Teams. Or if you want to have some sort of a documentations, customer comes and asks, okay, please share the document, what are you going to do? So Microsoft has a product called as Microsoft 365. Okay, I'm going to say that. I'm going to say it's called as MS. Once upon a time, it is called as Office 365. I simply go and say O365. Right now, it is simply called as only Microsoft 365. Right. So now this is basically, you can combine these two and right click and make it as a group actually. Where is it? Yeah, group, so that you can move both at the same time. Similarly, there is also other product. What is other product? The other product is, there is called as MS Microsoft CRM, which is called Dynamics actually. Microsoft Dynamics is there, which is responsible for your CRM, enterprise resource plan, ERP application, right? Apart from that, Microsoft also have few more. Let me tell you, they also have something called as Power Apps. If you want to deal with the data, MS Power Apps actually. Okay, so say like Power Apps login, for example. So you have something called as Power Apps actually, right? So what I'll do, as a Power App actually, right? So like this, and apart from that, there is also BizTalk server, and we also have cloud as well, right? So I'm going to say, come here. I'm going to say like MS Azure or MS Microsoft Public Cloud, also public cloud. Now, what you need to understand is everything. Tomorrow, you start with imagine the Azure actually. Later, you want CRM, you want the Power Apps, you want to have the Office 365. So this tenant ID is something like which is connected to everything. So that means what we need to understand here, it is tied to everything actually. So like this, it is tied to everything. So let me connect this one. So I'll take and connect this one, and similarly, you can also connect something like this. Okay. So the reason is once you get a tenant ID, right? You're going to use it in across all. By the way, you can use it across all. So that's Microsoft. So MS Public Cloud. So this tenant ID used across it. So that means what will happen? So you're going to use the same ID. Imagine my ID is sreeharshav at the rate of xyz.com, right? For example, which is in this tenant. I can get access to here, here, and here. Use the same ID and you get access, permission, everything. I don't need to maintain a separate authentication database, all these kind of things. So that is why it's very important, and no other cloud has this kind of tenant concept. I'm going to compare it with others. Okay, I'm going to show it to you. So overall, as you can see, so Office 365, it is very much useful if you basically want to have the kind of the email system, as well as if you want to have like communication system, SharePoint, Teams, everything, right? So you require all these things. Now anyway, our concentration is coming uh, more from here. I'm going to something like this, okay? But our concentration is more from the cloud actually, right? So under Microsoft Public Cloud, we call it as Azure actually, simply put, or I'll do something like this, right? Let's put like Microsoft Public, or I can say like Azure Public Cloud. The reason I'm saying about this is a public cloud is uh, that means it is open to anyone who want to create resources and start using it, right? They can basically use this. Now all our work, everyday work, will fall under this one. Now what exactly is there under the default tenant actually? So we go to the subscriptions, but there is a concept called as, under this there is a one more layer called as management groups. So I'm going to explain these management groups later. So under this Microsoft Cloud, right, you're going to get something called as management groups actually. I'm going to, or let me take this. I'm going to come here. I'm going to say management groups. It will be, so it will be, as you can see, under, you're going to get under the Microsoft Public Cloud. If you see, this is the management group. You have under the management group, you're going to have all the subscriptions. You can create a sub management groups, create a child group here, but we're going to talk about when I talk about giving permissions and all these things. As of now, assume that you have a root management group actually, right? In the root management group, under the root management group, you're going to have, let me take a snipping tool, and I'm going to take a little small about this one, and I'm going to copy and you can give it here basically. So this is the management groups actually. Now, under the management groups, you will have subscriptions. As I told you, this is what you're going to have subscriptions. Now, what exactly is a subscription? Why should we use a subscription? Now, I'm going to tell you the equivalent of a subscription. Let me put like this. Azure subscription is actually equal to AWS account. So if I go to AWS, right, you will see some account ID here. Check it out, guys. This is account ID is there, right? You have an account ID, which is actually equal to something called as project in Google Cloud. Okay, so all these things have a different names, but why do we need it? So I feel that because of two important things. First thing is security isolation. So what exactly that means? See, imagine if you take any a decent company, right? We're going to divide our infrastructure into multiple environments, starting with, for example, development will have a separate subscription or separate environment where it can be accessed by development. We'll have like a liberal security. Like that, we're going to have QA, or we can call it as UAT. Sometimes we have like pre-production. After that, we have like production. Sometimes we even have something called as post production. Like that, we're going to have multiple environments. Now there should be some sort of a, I can say, some sort of a boundary between these subscriptions, because so what I want only for production, and for production I want only DevOps and SRE team should have access. So maybe for development I can have all people can have access because they want to. When I say all people, dev slash DevOps, for example. For QA, we have like a QA team should have access, right? Testing team should have access. So how can I basically have this kind of thing is, so I can have different subscriptions, so that, so you might ask me saying that, sir, can I can't have one subscription and maintain everything in one subscription? Technically yes, right? So imagine I have some 10 lakh rupees, right? I can put everything in one bank, right? But what if the bank go bust, right? So the bank get bankrupt. So what I'm going to do? I don't want to risk that. So that's why I'm going to distribute my assets into different banks to make sure that there is a always a backup actually. Similarly, if you put everything in one subscription, if that get compromised, what if somebody deletes everything, like all your production, pre-production, everything? You don't want that, right? That's why it is very, very recommended scenario to deploy all your infrastructure in different subscriptions or AWS accounts or Google for network isolation. Second thing will be billing. Now you want to understand how much billing you are getting it for development, how much. So for example, if I go here, right, let me go show you like from a Azure perspective. Now I told you go to the management groups. You'll come here, come here like this and come here cost analysis actually. If you come to cost analysis, what you can see here is it is clearly going to show me, okay, current cost and all these things. What will happen is you can actually come here cost by subscriptions. You can go here. So if I do in such a way, if I go per subscription cost, right? So it should give me what is my subscription here. Or if I want to go back to previous, like in November, for example, I can see 2000 rupees happen for this subscription, this. So I'll have a centralized understanding what exactly is happening, how much increase is happening, what is per day cost. If I come here, okay, So something like this, I'll get a good understanding what is going on. Not only that, one thing we can do here is we can, in the cost analysis, we can go back, we can even go by service as well, but you get the idea, right? So normally the billing actually, so I understand why QA I'm getting more bill, why development is getting more bill, like that I can do that. And the third one is we have something called as compliance. What do you mean by compliance? Now, depending upon your application, what kind of application you are hosting, you need to follow some mandatory guidelines as well as recommended guidelines. So let's put like this, imagine you are working for a financial company, right? Financial company like bank or insurance or something, okay? So you need to follow some guidelines. Some of the guidelines is, imagine it's the e-commerce side, PCI DSS, Payment Card Industry Data Security Standards. If it is US, right? Imagine if you want to sell your product to all the US related government agencies, you have something like FedRAMP, okay? So or you have like HIPAA for health related, right? So similarly, if it is India, IRDA is there for insurance, you need to follow some sort of a guidelines. So for example, IRDA is going to say that, I am taking an example, all infrastructure logs, your application logs, infrastructure logs should have 180-day retention period. That means I should have logs. Imagine a server was being deleted. So who deleted, what time they have deleted. Okay. So all this information, what are the components they have deleted, all this information should exist for next 180 days. Else if there is a audit comes into the picture, right, they're going to put you hefty fines. So like that, there will be some complaints, all like there is a DR, is the database is backed up, is the snapshots is happening, like that there are certain rules which you need to follow, which comes under compliance and governance. So imagine you require these type of things for production environment, you don't want these things because it will add additional cost. You don't need to do that for development or non-production environment. So that's why for compliance and governance also, what we do is we basically have a separate production environment, we're going to enable all these things. Let's put like this, we have enabled SOC. Actually we need to have a SOC team. SOC stands for Security Operations Center, okay? So what will happen in Azure, we collect all the logs and we'll send it to log analytics actually, to make you to understand. So you have some log analytics workspaces. What we are going to do is, whatever is happening in your Azure environment, and this is applicable for mostly uh, for production. Actually I'm going to send it here. From there is something called, Azure has a product called as a Sentinel. Now the job of Sentinel, what it will do is, it will take all the data coming from Azure logs, analyze it, and based upon we can give some queries actually, check it out. Imagine some your application was being accessed by some other person somewhere, maybe your account is compromised. So it comes under SIAM, security information and event management. So it will basically check out what is the threats you are getting it. So the threat intelligence contains, so like that it's related to security. But of course you need to, it comes under compliance and governance, also maybe security, but you need to enable all these things. So if you enable this to every subscription, it is going to have hype your cost or hike up your cost a lot. You don't want to do that. Mostly you want to have the recommended is to enable for everything. But imagine because of the budget constraint, you want to only enable it for production. So then in that case, you need to have a separate subscription to do that. So these are the few things that is forcing people to have, or forcing the companies to have a separate subscription for different environments, and for security isolation and access controls, I can say access controls, like who need to access what, and also billing, and also compliance and governance. That is why if you go to, that is why if you go to any company, you will see normally if you take any company, you really don't require more than 5 6 subscriptions. What will happen initial days, the people who are working in the Azure are not that much familiar with the best practice. That's why they for every project they will create a subscription. I told you right yesterday, there is some person who said that they have 41 subscription because every project they create a subscription. Now problem what will happen is to establish communication among them, it will be headache actually. So you can basically create the subscriptions most probably based upon the environments like development, UAT, production, and all these things. So that is the management groups, and then you're going to get underneath you're going to get subscriptions. Each subscription will have an ID. As you can see, if I take this example, if I take two, see I have a development which has a subscription ID like this. Okay, so I have a production which has a different subscription ID. Now, obviously, and as I can say, like this, give me 1 minute. Okay, get it like this, and then okay, now I can get it. Something like this. Okay, like this. Now, under each subscription, again, most probably you are going to work at a subscription level only because okay, I need to go to production, I need to go development like that. You're going to interchange between the subscriptions to manage the environments. under under each subscription you're going to get something called basically called as a resource group. Actually, this is the basic building block. You're going to get something called as a resource group. So I'm going to say, which we short form we call it as RG, but it is called as resource group. Now what exactly is a resource group? Resource group is more like a folder actually. Let me tell you, see whatever you are seeing Azure, right? Whatever the screen you are seeing right now, right? This is not of course subscription ID and tenant both are different. Of course, Neil, that's what I'm saying, right? This is the tenant and you get the subscriptions under tenant, right? Yeah. Now coming here, whatever, yeah. So what I was trying to say is whatever the screen you are seeing as of now, this is not the default. I mean, this is not what Azure came actually. If you go to almost like 7 years, not 7, 8 years back, which is 2017 actually, you will have a completely, even the website is not portal.azure.com, it is windows azure.com, I think so. Like let's say like windows azure.com, for example. Let me see. Yeah, this is what. So this is what Azure looks like, Microsoft Azure. Okay, and you see there is a green something like this in 2017, 16, 17 mostly. I know, I'm pretty much sure. So when you deal with Azure, this is what a Microsoft Azure looks like, and now it looks like this actually. Now this concept of resource groups is not there earlier, like you don't have that concept. When they introduced something called as ARM architecture, it's called as ARM, Azure Resource Manager, short form ARM. They have introduced somewhere around 2017. That is where you used to get when you access, right? You used to get something. What is this? you're going to get something like a try our new portal. Actually, I used to get that when you click on that, it will go to new portal. So that is where you got this resource group concept. Earlier there is no concept of resource group. So resource group is something like, it is more like a folder where all your resources, like based upon your application. So what you can do is, you can create a resource group based on your application. Like my application name is alpha sec, for example. Okay, so what you can do, we normally create something like this: alpha rg. Okay, that is your application. So under, so it basically okay, so under the subscription you're going to get the resource group. Under the resource group you're going to get all these things, where if I go to home, right, let me see what are the different resources. Okay, let me do this. So I'm going to take virtual machines, or I'll do one thing, hold on. I'll take these three for example: storage accounts, databases, and everything. I mean, all the resources mostly. So I'm going to take this and keep it here. See that? So what will happen is, all the something like this. So whatever the application, so normally what are the things you will get in application, right? So you will have servers, you have load balancers, network, subnet, storage accounts, databases, logs, everything. All the resources will basically go under the resource group. So if I take the hierarchy at this level, and there is something called as Microsoft Entra ID. Now Microsoft Entra ID is something called as, we can call it as a centralized thing for authentication, everything. So it won't go under any subscription. It is basically exists separately. So you have like something like this Microsoft Entra ID, which is basically connected to your tenant. That means that means if you create some users, right, if you create some users, those users at a tenant level which can access any subscription, that is not a resource actually. So now if I consider this whole hierarchy, you have a Microsoft tenant ID which is created when you first created account. Underneath you have management groups. Underneath you have the different subscriptions, and underneath the subscription you have multiple resource groups. Under each resource group you can have multiple resources actually. This is what a logical hierarchy, and you need to remember this. Why? Imagine if I have some user, if I give user at a resource group level, he will get access to these resources. If I give at this subscription level, imagine what will happen if I have like multiple resources actually. So imagine I have something called as uh, Bravo RG, right? So this is a different application. Just imagine like this. Let's put like this, right? So what will happen? This is entirely something like this, for example. Okay, this is a different, and you have different resources. So depending upon, you can provide the access. If I give only at Bravo RG level, you'll get access to this one. So if I give a read only access subscription level, you'll get to Alpha and Bravo. If I give access to I can say management group level, so you'll get all the subscriptions, all the resource groups, all the services under that. Okay, so it is go beyond the IAM. IAM is not the only one thing. It will go beyond IAM, because there are a lot of security aspects also comes into the picture with Entra ID. So this is what basically the logical hierarchy of Azure, and this is the physical hierarchy of the Azure. I mean, physical hierarchy, we don't need to bother about that. Just you should understand the conceptual level. But so logical level, you need to understand. Okay, good. Now let's discuss about some questions. So let me unmute, guys. Sorry. So allow. Okay, you can unmute, and ask some questions, any doubts, technical questions about these two. These two. Later, I'm going to ask. You can ask about like other questions. For now, any questions on physical or logical level? You can unmute and ask. Are we clear? First of all, can you try to unmute?
Yes, Harsha. Yep.
I think 1 minute.
So,
I think I have a problem with my
Harsha, I have a question.
um, give me
Hello.
okay.
Harsha, yeah, are you able to hear me?
Yes. Go ahead.
So far in real world scenario, so we used to create a each subscription for dev QA production like that, or
You can have like not only three subscriptions. So for example, there will be a scenario where you need to create a separate subscription for some investment actually. So imagine there is a company which is coming and investing in your company. They want to put their application and they don't want to use your subscription. In that case, of course you need to create a separate subscription for them. So like that scenario. But ideally, if you have only one company, you are dealing with something like a startup, right? You have 3 4 subscriptions, that more than enough.
okay. So one more thing. So for example, if I have two resource groups and Cosmos DB in one RG and storage is in another resource group, means how both will communicate? Is there any separate way, or they can communicate like?
It's irrelevant now because I need to explain about the network. You need to wait for that.
Okay, okay.
Questions? Any questions related to physical and logical hierarchy?
Yeah. So if we
Hi,
have
Harsha.
the
Go ahead.
Hi, Harsha. Is the enter ID or tenant ID both are equal, or there are two different entities?
No, no. Entra ID is basically the name. Actually, earlier it was used to called as. Don't think since that it is ending with ID. Don't think that that is an ID. No, no, no. So that is a name of the application. Earlier, the name of Microsoft Entra ID is Azure AD. When I gave that name, people was confusing with Windows AD actually. So they have renamed to Microsoft Entra. They simply call it as Microsoft Entra, but when you go to the portal, they'll say Entra ID. So Entra ID is basically it's a centralized authentication or IAM mechanism, I can say, or security mechanism. So every time you create a tenant ID, okay, so there will be Entra ID for you, which will show only your tenant related things. So since because it is having an ID, don't think it is an ID. Just treat it like how storage accounts is there. It is also a service, but it is at a tenant level, not at a subscription level. That means it is applicable to the whole tenant. Any questions?
So for
So just
each
now,
Gmail,
Harsha, yeah, please go ahead.
oh, for each Azure cloud account, only one tenant ID, and we have multiple subscription IDs and resource groups. Correct?
Yes, so imagine you are a company, you want to go to the cloud, you have selected Azure. So what will happen is you create an account. When you first time create an account, and a tenant ID is allocated for you, and underneath you have subscriptions. But imagine if you have a very big company, if you take like a Tata Group actually. Tata Group contains Tata Steels, Titan, Tanishq, Tata Motors, a lot of things basically, right? Now, what are TCS? They have it's a conglomerate, right? So what they will do is each one is a separate line of business. So what will happen? They have their own tenants actually. So TCS has their own tenant and their own subscriptions. Tata Motors has different tenant. they can have their own tenants. That is also possible. Yes, any question?
Yeah, Harsha, when you create the Azure account, and you do we need to create like all those three subscriptions, like the production, development, UAT, all of that kind of stuff?
Not really required. I want to give you a exposure how things works in real-time environments. That is what I have created. When you are practicing, initially one subscription is enough. So later point, you need to require multiple subscriptions, because I'm going to teach you how do you handle authentication across multiple subscriptions. So later point of view, you can create one more. Anyway, after 1 month, it will be completed. So you need to upgrade that, and having a subscription don't cost you, because if you start using the resources, it will cost you. Just by creating an additional subscriptions won't cost you. So the reason I have these subscriptions is to give you a real-time feeling, so how things works in real time. So you might require maybe 2 subscriptions for your practice.
Okay, so we should go ahead and create just 2 subscriptions.
Start with one. Obviously, when I'm practicing, you'll easily understand, like, okay, in order to do this practice, you might require 2 subscriptions. That's all. 2 is enough.
Okay.
Any questions, folks?
Yeah, Mr. Harsha, you said billing or complaints can be tracked in a subscription level. Can we track the billing in the, I mean, resource level? If I go inside the subscription, there might be a resources running for 2 different projects, maybe applications. So can I track the billing for each service?
Yeah.
Is that possible?
So for that, you need to tag them actually. So what you are saying is, imagine in one subscription. So for example, take like I have 2 resource groups, which is SP1 and SP2 is there. So instead of having both are in production subscription, so what will happen is you want to have what is the cost accumulated for this specific RG actually. So that will also give it to you, so you can go to cost management and cost analysis, this particular subscription, right? So it will also give you at that level as well. But if you want to go inside resource group, then you need to use the tags, as you can see. So the cost analysis can go at subscription, sorry, resource group level as well. If you want to further dig down, then you need to assign the tags to the resources and do that.
So tags in the sense a custom a keyword kind of thing which we can track.
Yeah, if every resource you can go and you can basically give the tags here. For example, if I go to this virtual machine, we have something called tags here. So you can assign the tags, and you can, maybe I'm going to give like project alpha. This is applicable even in AWS as well. I'll say like project name. So you can actually, from part compliance part, right, I can make sure that this project name is mandatory across all all resources. Without that, you can't create it. So we can use something called Azure policies. We can do that. So what will happen using this one, we can go inside cost management and see that what exactly, because one subscription can have 10 projects. I want to see cost of only specific project. So you can use this and do that. Okay. So tomorrow we'll be discussing about creating what is a cloud shell, and what how exactly going to use the cloud shell to basically create some commands. So it will be very helpful. I want to show you like creating a Linux machine again to use this cloud shell. Similarly, I'm going to explain. So what is a about resource group, but we'll go deep and explain what is a resource group actually, and then understand how VNet or virtual network works for network isolation. So that is what we're going to talk tomorrow. And let me go ahead and explain the fee details, and I'll open. Let me stop the recording for now.